trust that first thought. As soon as the mind takes over, it's so easy to talk yourself into or out of something. But if you can just lean into that first thought, test it out on the small things, build the evidence, stack the evidence that it's always right. Like, I don't know if I have an experience of a time that it wasn't right.
Welcome to the Anniston Riekstins Show. This space is created for the woman coming home to her voice, her power, her way. For the woman remembering who she really is, beneath the noise, beneath the roles, beneath the world's expectations. I'm Anniston, transformational guide, spiritual teacher, best-selling author, and creator, here to walk beside you, to share stories, wisdom, and energy that guide you back home. Here, we lead from the inside out. We create from overflow, not hustle. We rise not by becoming someone else, but by remembering who we've always been. This isn't just a podcast. It's a homecoming. So let's dive in.
Welcome back to the Anniston Riekstins Show. I'm so excited you're tuning in today. There are people you meet and you think, oh, we have a lot in common. And then there are people you meet and something deeper happens, something that bypasses logic entirely. You just know. And today's guest is one of those people for me. Ashlee Nelson came into my world through one of my programs, and from the moment our paths crossed, I knew it was not by accident. The soul familiarity between us runs deep. This is someone I believe was brought into my life for a very specific reason, and I think by the end of this episode, you'll understand exactly why I feel that way. Ashlee is just a beautiful human. She's a mother, a seeker, someone who has spent years learning to trust the voice inside her that everyone around her kept asking her to quiet. From advocating for her baby's life in a room full of physicians who weren't listening, to navigating religion, to waking up in the middle of the night and saving her son, Ashlee's story is one of a woman who kept being brought back to herself again and again until she finally stopped fighting it. And this conversation is really, in its essence, about intuition, about reclaiming, about what happens when you stop outsourcing your knowing to people with degrees and titles and external authority, and you finally come home to yourself. So if you have ever had a moment where you just knew something and talked yourself out of it, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the Anniston Riekstins Show. I am so excited that you are tuning in for today's episode. And I just have the most incredible human joining me today, Ashlee. I'm so happy to have you in this space.
Oh, Anniston, I adore you. And I could not think of a better person to have my debut podcast episode with. I'm just thrilled that you even want to chat.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding? Of course. As I mentioned in the introduction, you're someone that I immediately felt a connection with. And there's a difference I find between meeting people that you feel like you have things in common with, and then meeting people that you feel like you have soul resonance with.
Yeah.
And I felt like I had soul resonance with you and with your amazing husband, Jake. And I know my husband, Rudy, feels the same way. And I'm so grateful to be in your proximity and to work with you and to learn from you too. And so after I got to know your story and what path you've been walking, I just knew I had to have you on this podcast. And it's because so many women that I serve and that I know listen to this podcast because they reach out to me are in a similar position of where you've just come from. And what I really want to do is spend time just allowing you to have space to share your story and to share your journey of really moving into a reclamation, right? Of your truth, your purpose, your passion, all the things that as a woman, we don't always give ourselves permission to do. And so I think I'd like to just start by opening the floor and allowing you to start wherever you want to start. I'm not going to ask, tell me about yourself. I think let's just, wherever you're feeling called, at whatever point in your story you're feeling called to start, let's start there.
Okay. So you mentioned resonance, and the very first time I heard your podcast, Jake heard Rudy on another podcast, and then he sent it to me, listened to it, and I immediately was like, I need more of Rudy. And then I went to his podcast, and it was you and him. I heard your voice, And as soon as I was done with the podcast, I sent Jake a text and I said, "We are going to be friends with them." There was something within my soul that knew you. It was like
Yeah.
there was this inner knowing and connection, and I mean, literally almost to the day. This happened a year ago. And so
Mhm.
to see how things have evolved and how our paths have come together, it's beyond me because there's so much more at play.
Yeah.
And literally, we were brought together for a reason. And I'm just honored by that and humbled by that. And it's a part of my story. It's a part of me coming back to myself. I think you have been a reminder and a beacon for me of who I am and who I've always known that I am. And my journey, I'm sure, like so many others, it's up and down and it's evolved and it's complicated. And it's not
Mhm.
until I sit back and look at it that I'm like, okay, it actually has all been with intention and with purpose and exactly how it was supposed to be to get me to where I'm at today. And so I can look back now with
Mhm.
gratitude. There were moments and have been moments where I have felt anguish and anxiety and panic and fear. And now I'm like, it makes sense. I needed to go through the journey to get where I'm at today. So I sit in this chair now with hope and optimism and knowing that things are unfolding perfectly.
Mhm.
So my intuition since a child has been very strong. And I would sense things, I would know things. And my mom is the same way. In fact, my mom, her intuition is so sharp that she actually saved my life as a kid. I was almost kidnapped, and my mom had this download to follow a school bus, and she actually saved my life. And so
Wow.
there's something within us, within the women in my family, that we do have this inner knowing,
Mhm.
and it got clouded. And through conditioning, through domestication of just living life, outside voices, leaders in religion, teachers at school, they tell you how to think. They tell you what to do. They tell you the statistics, and it just begins to cloud this inner knowing, at least it did for me. And my intuition over years began to take the back seat.
Yeah.
And this has come out in so many ways. For example, my oldest, when she was born,
Mhm.
she was a month old and she was put in the hospital. There was a lot of back and forth before she was admitted to the hospital, and I just had this inner knowing that something was not okay. It started with blood in her stools, and then it progressively got worse and worse. And every time we would go to the doctor, they'd be like, "Oh, she's okay, everything's fine," painting me as the what I interpreted it as, the first-time mom, worrying over things that don't matter, but I knew something was wrong. And so, again, there's this, like, I know
Mhm.
something, I'm being told something different, but there's a disconnect, and there's a lot of dissonance in what I am feeling. And she kept getting worse. We took her to the doctor one day, they sent us out. Again, this is after multiple visits. And we got home, and I remember going into my room and just praying and asking beyond me to know what to do. And I walked out of my bedroom and she vomited all over. And I knew right then that it was a sign to take her back in and to
Mhm.
stand in my knowing of something was wrong with my baby. So we took her to a children's hospital and they admitted her because she actually looked so awful and so sick. And a physician ended up telling me that if I wouldn't have taken her in that night, that she would have died over like
Mm.
the course of the evening because of how sick she was. She ended up being in the hospital for an entire month. And even with that, there were times that I knew what was wrong with her and I was going toe to toe with physicians because there was
Mhm.
something that I knew. But then I felt shame and guilty for, no, they're the ones with the education. They're the ones with the degree. Who am I to say what's wrong with my baby? And so I have a lot of episodes and experiences like this where I just know something so, so deeply, and it has taken me being put in positions where it almost is for my daughter, it was life and death.
Mhm.
I had to be in a position to finally be like, "Actually, no. I know this, and you need to listen to me." And when I made after a conversation with literally a room full of attendings and residents, they took out her feeding tube, and then the next day after she magically stopped puking and all the things, they came in and they were like, "Thank you. Thank you for advocating for your child. Thank you for knowing her like you do." She was only a month old, but I
Yeah.
knew something. And so, I guess what I'm trying to say is, for me, I've been put in these moments, in these situations where I have no choice but to speak my truth, because the
Mhm.
cost is too great if I don't.
Mm.
I mean, with religion, with literally everything, I have a story that relates to every area of my life where it comes back to this inner knowing, to this, "Are you going to listen to yourself now? Are you going to speak now?" Because it's always been here. It's always been within me. And it's within everyone. I think it's a God-given gift that we have. And we are taught, without even knowing we're being taught, to cloud it and to shut it up.
Yeah. Well, I love that this is where you started and this is where you went because I do think it's at the crux and the foundation of it all, right? It's through conditioning, severing that direct connection to your knowing, to your soul, to your inner guidance system, which was always came stock standard for all of us, right? This is not an additional upgrade. This is part of the original template of being here, and we have these spiritual gifts. We've always had this direct connection to whatever you call your higher source, God, creator, source, universe, whatever that is. And as women, we actually biologically, it's more pronounced in our bodies, just the way that our brains are formed. And so we are teachers in a lot of ways for men, but we've had, well, let's just say it, a vastly distorted masculine running our world for a very long time. So, all of that, the wisdom that had been passed through the years from woman to woman to woman became quieter and quieter and quieter, and in some places, completely gone. And so we're having to recover and remember that wisdom of how to reconnect to that, but it doesn't take away the work, right? And I think it's one thing to like start opening up. And I guess this is where I want to go next with you is it's one thing to recognize like, okay, well, I have a connection to something and I'm noticing that when I follow it, that it's always the right move. But it's a whole other thing to actually do it, right? And
Yeah.
someone to look at you and say you're crazy or someone you be the only one, right? The only one who is feeling out of resonance with an idea. I know you mentioned religion and that's something that I think a lot of people can really relate to because we're all have our own stories, right, of belief and what that has served for us. I would love for you to share a little bit about your story, about how you grew up and then what that process looked like for you to reclaim your sovereignty there.
So, I guess before I get into that, there really is a cost to stepping into your inner alignment and your inner knowing, especially in, for me, religion.
Mhm.
It came at a cost. And I now realize, though, that there was already a cost. I
Yeah.
was losing myself because I was more concerned about what other people would think or that they would be disappointed, or I was so externally focused that the cost was me.
Mhm.
And so I grew up in such an incredible, loving home. And I'm actually a Mormon or a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as they call it now. And that's how I grew up. And there's a whole lot within that religion, as I have learned in every single religion.
Yeah.
Purity culture, this is what you need to do. I look at it as checkbox religion. You do this, and then you do this, and then you do this, and then this is what happens. And I've seen that pattern, and as I've had conversations with other people, I'm like, "Oh, we're not actually any different." We all experience some form of being told how to think, how to worship, all of the things. And I think there's beautiful, wonderful things within organized religion. And, I mean, so many gifts and blessings have come into my life from how I was raised. I remember as a young child, though, my mom was filling out some form, and on it asked the religion, and she put Mormon on it, and I remember being like, "No, I don't want to be known as a Mormon," and it's not that there's anything wrong with Mormons, but I had
Mhm,
something within me of, I am so much more. As a child, I understood that
mhm,
there was so much more than this label, and I didn't want the label. And I was like, "Well, aren't Mormons Christian? Can't you just put on Christian on there?" Because that felt more encompassing and more inclusive. So, a super young child, I vividly remember this experience. And then conversations, yeah, I would hear people speak at church of, "This is the only true church," and as a kid, I'd be like, "No, because if you say this is true, by default, that is discrediting everyone else, and no one deserves to be discredited because their story is their truth." And
mhm,
so I've always known this. But again, when you are raised in a religion and when you are surrounded by people who are immersed in that religion, to be the one to take a stand and be like, "But what about this? But actually, what about this person? They're just as incredible, and if you believe in a heaven, like, would you actually think they're not going to be in heaven?" So I just
mhm.
remember having this internal dialogue within myself and actually not even understanding exactly why I was feeling what I was feeling. So in 2020, it was my personal year 9.
Those are doozies, by the way, for any of you who haven't had a 9 in a while.
Oh, it's a big one. Not only, I mean, COVID was going on, right? So to have this hit when the world was also going through its own thing was, it was big.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, my body was just like, enough is enough. I am done going to church just because I need to check a box. I am done prescribing to these things that my soul is actually saying no to. And so I dropped it. I dropped it all. And that was so scary because I had a conversation with Jake and I was just like, "Hey, this is where I'm at." And his conditioning came out in that conversation. He panicked. And then I was like, "Okay, well, if I can't talk to you about this, then I'm not going to talk to you about this." And I
Yeah.
found other people to talk to. And then Jake, bless that man, he's so wonderful. He quickly knew and realized, "No, I want to be in this with you." And so he ended up becoming a safe space for me to question with, to say, "What about this?" with. And so I was on my journey of dropping things. He would take the kids to church, I would stay home. And then my grandmothers, the end October of 2020, both of my grandmothers passed away within a week of each other. And I was incredibly close with both of them. And we were living in Texas at the time. We drove to Utah to go to my grandmother's, my dad's mom's funeral. And while we were there, my mom's mom got put on hospice. And I was actually there with her when she passed. I heard her heartbeat for the last time. And something about that moment took me even further down. And I was like, "What is it? What is life? Is there anything beyond this? Is there actually even a God?" Like, I had to strip it all away and sit in this raw, vulnerable unknowing because I was like, "Other people can't tell me what there is. I need to know it from within." And so that sent me a little bit deeper. And then in December of that same year, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And it rocked me to my core when I got the news, but then something within me was like, "Actually, this isn't right. It's not Crohn's disease." And it was almost like I was being given this glimmer through something scary to be like, "Go within, attune with yourself, Ashley, because you no. And I knew it wasn't Crohn's disease. And it's not. I'm incredibly healthy. It's just so weird how these pieces begin to come together, but they're the teaching grounds. It's such a crazy time. A few months after that, my uncle, whom I was incredibly close with, passed away from ALS. So this was a big 3 deaths within a year, a health diagnosis. There was just a lot going on. And then also deconditioning, deconstructing religion at the same time. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what am I doing?"
Mhm.
So before he passed away, I had the opportunity to chat with him. And I said, "Jay, I need to know if there's something beyond this life. So when you go, will you come back? Will you send me a message? Will you send me a sign?" And he kind of like laughed. His communication was getting hard. And he kind of chuckled and he's like, "I'll try." And I was like, "No, I like need you to make me a promise that you will come to me and without a doubt I will know it's you." And he said yes. So we're in Texas and this whole time I am low. I am feeling
Mhm.
alone, even though I have Jake and my kids. I'm letting go of a lifetime of who I was and what I associated with, and it's lonely. And I was at home one day and I was like, I am in despair and I have to choose to level up. Despair is such a low vibration. I was like, I need something higher. And so I made a choice and I said, all right, I am going to choose to believe that there is something greater than me, that there's something beyond this. So we're putting a pin in my conversation with my Uncle Jay. So this is after, and I'm still in despair, but I'm choosing to believe that there's something more. And I was sitting outside and I saw a butterfly. And I was like, okay, that's it. Every time I see a butterfly, I am going to say that the source beyond me, God, creator, universe, sees me, knows me, and loves me. And so for the next 2 weeks, every time I saw a butterfly, I was like, I am seen, I am loved. I am seen, I am loved. And I would see butterflies every now and then. And one day, my kids are at school, I'm at home, and I just feel like I hit a new low in my emotions and confusion. And I said, okay, I like looked up and I was like, if there is something more, like, I need you to show up for me right now. And I need to know, I need to know. And I left to pick them up from school. And I kid you not, there was a butterfly migration that was happening. And my soul was on fire because I had made a declaration 2 weeks before that butterflies were going to mean something to me.
Mm.
And then I was surrounded by butterflies. And I start crying and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, okay." Within minutes, I'm at the school and I'm like, "Yeah, no way. That was a coincidence. Like,
As
no
the mind
way."
does, just completely discounts it.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, I'm like, "There's no way." I'm like, "If that okay." So I'm like sitting in the car pickup line and I'm like, "If that was actually something, you'll prove it to me even more. Like, send a butterfly to my window." Like, I almost start challenging the sign because I
Yeah.
was just like, it was so powerful and mighty that I'm like, "There's no way that this can be real." And so then I'm like, "If this was really a message for me, send a butterfly to me." And I look over and there's a butterfly on my car window on my door. And I was like, "Okay, I have to choose to believe." And what's interesting is I wasn't choosing to believe back into religion. I wasn't choosing to believe, go back into my box. It was this moment of, okay, there is something beyond me, and I know that now. There is something energetic. There is something so much bigger than me, and I just allowed and invited it into my life.
Yeah.
And it was a reprieve. It was a reprieve for a minute. And then, I mean, I started going to therapy. I was having, like, panic attacks. I had never experienced anything like that before. And another day I was going to pick up my kids from school, and I was sitting in the car, and I started having a panic attack, and I was actually on the phone with my sister, and she was just chatting away, had no idea what was going on, and I just like, the world started closing in on me, and coming back to my Uncle Jay, what he had said to me was, because I said, "How will I know it's you?" And he said, "It will be a pigeon." He flew pigeons, and he had pigeons, and pigeons were very special to him. And so I'm sitting in the car, the world is closing in on me, so it felt, and all of a sudden, I look up and there's the most gorgeous pigeon. I don't think pigeons are actually beautiful at all normally, but there was the most beautiful pigeon that came and swooped down, and before I could even recognize what it was, everything lifted. My panic attack vaporized. It was almost like I, like, caught my breath, and I knew, and I was like, "Jay," and then it flew into a tree. Sometimes I realize as I've sat in these stories and I've shared these stories with a couple people, like butterflies, okay, you can either choose to believe it's something or not. The pigeon, I can either choose to believe it's something or not. But there was something within my soul that was like, "But this is something, and it's something for you." And I'm just in awe, but also I'm grateful for my journey. I'm grateful for where it has taken me. And in
Mhm.
fact, my relationship with Jake is even closer now than it was. I can step into my church building and be confident, being like, you know what? I love you people, but I'm also okay not to believe like you, but we can still
Mhm.
belong and connect. And I have found so much peace. And then my intuition is just beginning to turn back on. And I've
Mhm.
always had it, but I had to be willing to welcome it back in and welcome me, back into
Yeah.
myself.
Well, and that's where I think, oh gosh, so many things I could unpack. So many things about what you just shared. Like, I'm so grateful that you shared the story that you did because I think I've spoken about my own journey and it happens that we spiral, right? In and out of these moments of who the F am I? Like, oh my gosh, what's happening, right? This destabilization that happens every time we're expanding into a new level of consciousness, of being able to understand who I really am. You know what I mean? And where I really come from and what essence I am. And that can be super messy and clunky. And it can look like having a panic attack in a car because your body is like, what is happening? Right? It's one thing to consciously say, I'm going to walk away from all the things, all the structures I've created in my life that have created that stability, the known. The minute you start walking, you make those confident steps into the unknown, your body has to come with you. And sometimes that's the biggest hurdle, right? Is to get that body on board with that. And I also think in my experience, and I had a similar experience just in that of really coming to question early in my 20s, starting to really question and take ownership over my connection with God, right? Like mine and to call it mine and it to not be required that it needs to happen in a certain place with certain rules under certain doctrine and that it needs to get the nod and approval of the authority, right? But that I get to follow my truth because what I recognize, and now what's interesting is as I sit across from so many women who will say, I just don't know what my purpose is. I don't know who I am. I don't know where I'm going. And this is all the same issue, right? Because the minute you outsource your own connection to your truth, you outsource that too. And so, of
Yeah.
course, you're going to be confused. Of course, you're going to feel lost because you've literally outsourced your own connection to someone else who doesn't have the connection that you have about you, your specific path. But reclaiming it is going to feel uncomfortable at first and it is going to feel foreign and it is going to feel dangerous. Like you're doing something that's so like not everyone around you is doing and you're taking the path less traveled. And so along your journey, like as you started moving forward, you were a stay-at-home mom,
Mhm.
correct? So
Yep.
you were a stay-at-home mom and then I'm sure you came to a point where you were like, what do I want to do with myself? That the most popular question I think probably ever Googled, like, how do I find out what my purpose is? What do I know? So talk us through that because I know where you are today, but I'm sure that there was a journey to get there.
Hey, sister, let's take a quick pause because I want to tell you about something I have just released. It is a free numerology quiz called Uncover the Hidden Patterns Shaping Your Life. And all you need is your date of birth. Here's what you're going to walk away with: your life path number, the curriculum you came here to master, and clarity on the hidden pattern that has been quietly running your life without you even knowing it was there. Because once you can see it, you can stop blaming yourself for it. You realize it was never a you problem. It was just a pattern you hadn't seen clearly yet. And once you can see it, you can actually do something about it. One of my clients said it best. She said, Anniston didn't just tell me about my path, she helped me remember it. That is what this quiz does. The link is in the show notes. It is free and it is worth every minute. Now back to the episode.
Oh, yes, there's always that journey, right? I actually felt like I lost myself. So Jake went to medical school and I put so much in on his journey to becoming a physician, to supporting him and helping him, and I wanted to be home with our kids.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a mother so bad, and being home with my babies, it made me happy, but I lost myself along the way. There were months and years that I was like, "I don't even know what I like anymore. Like, who am I if I'm not attached to Jake and if I'm not attached to my kids? Who is Ashlee? Who is she?"
Mhm.
And I think, though, it's all connected, and I had to drop first who I was being told to be within religion. I had to drop these external barricades and fences I had around myself to come in alignment with where I was going and who I wanted to be. And for the longest time, I didn't know. I started when we were living in Texas, started doing some yoga. And I was like, there's something about yoga that is really, I like it. And then I had a memory of being 18 years old and being like, you know what? One day I'm going to be a yoga teacher. I was at the gym with my boyfriend and I had this download of wanting to teach yoga. I forgot about it until I started doing yoga again. And I was like, oh, there's something here. And then I dropped it because life is busy, was with my kids. And we moved to Idaho. And we had just been here like a month. And I was like, no, yoga, this is the time. I'm in a new city, a new state. I get to show up and be who I want to be. Nobody knows me. It's time for me to learn who I am. And so I was like, I'm going to get into yoga. So I looked up on my phone. I was like, there's got to be a yoga studio. I look it up and it's like 11 o'clock at night. That next morning, there was a studio in town that was opening. It was their grand opening, their first class. And I was like, that's it. I'm going. And there was something within my soul that was like, yes. I actually bought a membership without even taking a class at the studio.
That's called resonant. That's
Yeah.
called when you just know. You don't even have to. You're like, of course I'm going to do a membership. It never makes logical sense.
It doesn't, and I'm like, I actually have learned, and now I am so good if my body says yes, I'm like, "Oh, doing it, doing it, doing it." But it
Yep.
took some practice to get there, but yes, when the body says yes, listen to her. She knows what she is doing. She knows what she is saying, and she knows where she's leading you. And so I went to this studio and it was the most incredible yoga experience of my life. There were no mirrors, it was dark, the music was loud, and I had this moment to just be within. Because when I've done group fitness things before, I always felt out of place. I always felt like, oh, they're so good. That comparison was happening. And so I was in this
Mhm.
environment where it was removed. I could just be me and I loved it. And I went home and I was like, Jake, oh my gosh, you have to come back with me. So he comes to yoga with me. And I was like, oh, wasn't that so great? And then I didn't go do it again for like 4 months. I was like,
But you had the membership, but you didn't go again.
so I stopped going to yoga and I deleted Instagram off my phone. I was just unplugged, getting to know some people in the community, but I was kind of like pulled back a little bit. And then one day, I was like, "You know what? Maybe I'll, like, look at Instagram again." So I get my phone, download Instagram, and the first thing I see, I kid you not, is the yoga studio in this community. She does a post about putting on a teacher training. And my body was like, "You're doing it. Why am I doing this? I don't know." So I listened and I reached out and I was like, "I'm interested in doing this yoga teacher training." My collective experience with yoga was those 2 classes here, and then just dabbling a little bit in Texas. Like, not a yogi, no yoga experience, but my body was like, "Yes." And I joined the training, and it changed my life. My kids, my daughters got to see mom go after something. They were my biggest cheerleaders. Jake was the greatest support. And it was like I had this moment to begin to tune into who I am and what I desire. And I now teach at the studio. I teach Pilates. While I was doing my yoga teacher training, something else came into my life, and it was sound healing. And I knew someone who was doing some sound healing, and they were putting on a certification, and I was like, "Yes." And so I went and got certified in sound healing during my yoga teacher training. And my journey is just evolving into I went through some things that were dark and hard for myself, and now I am stepping into this place of collective healing and community
Mhm.
and being open and letting people know something I speak to in yoga. I mean, the room's dark, finding ease within the effort, finding ease when life is hard, finding ease in the postures, finding ease in the effort. And
Mhm.
I'm beginning to see that in my life. There's always effort. We're always putting something forth and forward. But now it's not the chaos that was 2020 and 2021 and 2022. I think my goal and my hope is for women to know who they are, to know their worth, to
Yeah.
know they don't need anyone or anything other than themselves. And yes, like, of course, having a spouse or your children or relationships, that's fulfilling and wonderful and a part of it. But those things only get better when you know yourself and when you have yourself. And I'm like, if we truly understood, and I know I'm only tapping the surface of who I am and who I am becoming, but I do have a gift of being able to see people. And gosh, when I see people and I'm like, oh my gosh, if you could see you how I see you, like you would be unstoppable. And so I'm trying to mirror that back to myself because I think it's universal. I think if we all really knew who we were, our potential,
Mhm.
the impact, the reach we could have. I mean, even doing this podcast, I was like, why me? Why does Anniston want to talk to me? Like, I don't have a big Instagram account. I'm not out there publicly. And then my body said, why not you? You've lived
Why not
life.
you?
You've experienced just as much as other people. It's just different and unique to you. And anyone, everyone, people listening to this, they all have a story. You all have something to share, a way to connect with people. And I feel like that is the overarching thing for me is it's not pointless. Like everything I went through, there was purpose. And everyone has a story that can help someone else. And so it's still evolving. I'm still becoming, but I know I want to become who I am surrounded by other women who are becoming who they are. Because I think
Mm.
as we unite and rise, and men as well, the world could be such a beautiful, magical, healing, whole place.
Mhm. You said ease within the effort, and I really sat with that for a second, and I was thinking about that and your journey and how all of your journey has always brought you to almost like this precipice, this choice point. The challenging experience, the point wasn't to be taken away so you didn't have to move through it, right?
Right.
It was to remember to trust yourself. And when you trust yourself and that inner voice, that inner knower, you naturally come into alignment. And so, while, like you said, like, how can you find ease even when maybe you're in a painful position or yoga, like where you can find that relaxation, that still point, even when you feel that there is tension or it's hard or you're stretching yourself farther than you ever have before. I just feel like there's so much relevance to that in every area of our life. And that what I see when I look at you is someone who is very committed to listening to your intuition,
Yeah.
to allowing your body to lead you, and which I love that you now help women and men become more embodied, right? Through movement, right? Through a movement practice of becoming more grounded in your body and listening and hearing. And then through sound healing, which I am just like crazy about. But also, what I see is someone who I don't actually think you're even becoming. I just think you're in the flow of unfoldment. Like
Mm.
now, your purpose is unfolding around you. You're an active participant in it. It's happening all around you. And every day, me all of a sudden getting this inspiration like, I really want to ask Ashlee to be on my podcast because that's how I live my life is very intuitively. It's intuitively led. And you said yes. You could have said no. You can be like, "No, no, that feels uncomfortable. That feels like a stretch." But you were like, you listened, you tuned in, you were like, "Yes, this is unfoldment. This is what it looks like. It's being a willing participant in and letting synchronicity to be your organizing principle." Right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing for you to do or force because everything is divinely timed. Everything is unfolding exactly as it should, us finding each other and Rudy and Jake connecting and all for a purpose. And we don't know fully what the big picture is. We have no idea where any of it's leading. All we know is how it feels in the moment. Right. And so I just think your journey is such a beautiful example of this and you being willing to follow your truth and to trust it so much so that you allowed it to lead you in the path, like the path less traveled. And so I want to ask you this question. If you could leave a message for a woman who is maybe relating to your story, whether it be she's finding herself standing at that choice point of knowing she's outgrown and expanded beyond a belief system that supported her
Yeah.
at some point, right? Or for a long time, maybe for a short time, but she's standing there and she's not sure what to do, or that woman who is, again, at a choice point where it's like, will I trust myself and move forward or will I not? What advice would you want to give to the you of 6 years ago?
I would wanna hug myself. So, give yourself a hug because the journey is going to take you places that you never thought possible, that you couldn't even comprehend. And for me, when I have become so in tune with myself, when you asked me to be on the podcast, the first thought was yes. Probably 7 seconds later, it was like, really?" But I knew that first response. And so trust it, trust that first thought, because as soon as the mind takes over, it's so easy to talk yourself into or out of something. But if you can just lean into that first thought, test it out on the small things, build the evidence, stack the evidence that it's always right. Like, I don't know if I have an experience of a time that it wasn't right.
Hmm.
And so I think as we begin to trust ourselves and as we become just so confident in who we are, the unfolding, the becoming, it almost won't matter beyond that. And actually, I believe that all the things we are worried about losing, the things that need to go away will go away, whatever that is. But things that we are
Yeah.
worried about losing, if they're meant to stay, they'll only get stronger and better. So
Hmm.
hug yourself, trust yourself, and just be on the ride because hindsight looking back, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I wouldn't trade my life experiences knowing what I know now. And I mean, we only scratched the surface on what I've actually been through. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade any of it. But I also
Mm.
think moving forward, I can get through things quicker and I don't have to sit in the messy, murky for as long because of what I know. Because when she speaks, when my soul speaks, I know I can trust that, and I can get to the other side much quicker. At least that's my hope.
And it's ever evolving, right? I feel like our lives really are like our petri dish. It's like our lab. It's our experimentation where on a daily basis, we have every opportunity to practice and get instant feedback. And then that's true, right? It's like, okay, if you really want to flex into this knowing, which I do believe, and especially at the time of the drop of this podcast, which now I know exactly when this needs to be, which is probably going to be in June, because this is when we are all being asked to go inward and to reconnect with our truth and our intuition and who we are. It's a felt experience. You cannot cognitively, you could read every book on intuition. It would all stay up in your head. It is an experience. And with every experience of learning to trust yourself and follow that, you'll get the feedback. And then those decisions become reinforced and it becomes safer. Even your nervous system starts to get on board. I mean, I think it allows you to make the smaller decisions easier. But if you do that enough times, that then when that big decision comes, when you've got to take a leap off the proverbial ledge where you cannot see the bottom and you have no idea what's going to happen, you will trust yourself. But if you wait for the big decision to say, I think I'm going to start looking into this and experimenting with my intuition, I don't advise that. I would start with even sometimes like I'll look in the refrigerator. I'm like, what food would best support my body right now? And then I'll feel into it, right? I'll be like, would it be this? No. And then it's like, until it's like a hell yes, I'm like, you learn what a hell yes feels like in your body.
Oh my gosh, yes. I something as simple as me and Jake going on a date, and before I'd be like, "Oh, I don't know. Yeah, well, whatever. We can go eat there." And now he'd be like, "Do you want this or this?" And I actually will, like, sit in it, and I, like, put my hands out, and I'm like, "I know what I want."
Yes.
And so it's so funny. Yes, as simple as opening the fridge and being like, "What does my body need?"
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. It just adds fuel to the fire of this internal power and truth, intuition, this inner self. It really is an experience, and it's also a feeling. You can't
Mhm.
put words on it, you can't quantify it. Sometimes you just know. I was woken up in the middle of the night, so I almost lost my two-year-old as well. He almost passed away from croup, actually, and I woke up in the middle of the night, like, shot up out of bed with this, like, feeling to go check on him, and I went in there, and he was retracting, he couldn't breathe, and I was
Oh,
like, "Oh my gosh," like, I look back on that now, and I'm just like, we know." But the thing is, I feel like there are energies beyond us that don't want us to know. Just like there's high vibrating energy, there's low dense energy that wants to keep us
yeah.
stuck. And it's just like launching into I think we can launch. I think we can just be like, "I trust myself," and just begin acting.
Mhm.
Like, stepping into that. "What do you want for dinner?" And then the big things, waking up in the middle of the night, like, those can happen regardless, but I think sometimes it's the little things
Mhm.
that stack up and actually have more power.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And I also think, again, it allows you to, because there will always be decisions you are asked to make, right? Should I or shouldn't I go into this business partnership? Should I or shouldn't I move? I mean, right now, I mean, Rudy and I have had another opportunity to flex into this on a deeper level, right? As we are planning and preparing to move from Wilmington, North Carolina to Montana, which again this was a knowing, this was a sense. And we started receiving the sense 6 months before. People will say, "I was blindsided." I'm like, "Bullshit. No, you
Right.
weren't. You just weren't tuned in. You weren't tapped in." I started feeling a shift in the energy, and it wasn't like, "Oh, I don't like this place anymore," or "I don't like my house," or it didn't come from a negative space. It
No.
was more of a knowing of prepare. Just start to prepare yourself. It felt like an extrication. I was being, like, unwinded from this path that had been paved with my future assumption that this would be the path for a long time. And so I just started being curious about it and not putting pressure on it. And Rudy and I would talk about it and I'd be like, "Do you have any sense about that?" He'd be like, "Oh, yeah, I have a sense about it too." And so we knew we were talking about moving even with our kids. And they would say, "Well, where do you think we're going?" We're like, "We don't know yet." They're like, "You two are bonkers. But no, honestly, like that is the world you get to live in. When you start to allow and you drop from your head and you start to become heart led, you naturally align with your intuition and you will be guided and you will always know. You might not have all the details yet because I think sometimes when we know too much ahead of time, we meddle or we
Yeah.
try to like get in there and like manipulate. You'll know when you know. You'll know when you need to know. And as you move forward, the picture will become more clear. And as you move a little more forward, you'll get the next step. That is, I believe, what we're moving into, or the way our life will be oriented moving forward as Earth is going through this massive frequency shift. So are we.
Yeah.
And I think it's all of the invitation right now. And so my hope is that anyone listening to this, my challenge to you is this. I want you to reflect on all those moments similar to Ashlee's where you've had moments in the past where you had a knowing, something came forward for you, something that was it didn't make logical sense. You couldn't explain it. Maybe you didn't even have words to explain, but you just knew, or you received guidance, or you saw a sign, whatever that is. And I want you to write them all down in a journal. And I want you to start to stack those to show you that you've always had this ability. And now you just get to start flexing into that and honing it. Because just like we had to learn how to walk, we always had legs, we still had to learn how to use them, right? We had eyes to read, but we still had to learn how to read. Same with our spiritual gifts, right? They require focus and intent and its own kind of learning, but it's always experiential. And so, my hope is that you have found some inspiration today to start to do your own deep dive. And that also, for those of you that are standing at a precipice of a choice point, of making a choice, that this will be your sign to look within because that is the only place you're going to find the true answer. So Ashlee, I want to thank you so much for coming on today. This has been everything I thought it could be and so much more. And I feel like a manifestation of something really great. So thank you.
Thank you. You are such a light, and just thank you for holding space for me and letting me share a small part of who I am.
Well, we look forward to hearing more. And I look forward to continuing to witness the unfolding in your journey. For those of you that are listening, go find Ashlee. I will put her Instagram information in the show notes. Follow her. She's doing some really exciting things, obviously, with yoga, Pilates, but sound healing. No doubt an innovator in her space and will continue to be. And I am so excited to be able to continue the journey with you, Ashlee. So, everyone listening, thank you for tuning in. I see you. I love you. And I will see you on next week's episode.
Thank you for being here, beautiful soul. If this episode spoke to you, I'd love for you to pass it along to another woman who might need these words today. And if you feel called, it would mean so much if you would take a moment to rate and review this podcast. It's one of the best ways to support this work and help these messages reach more women who are ready to remember who they are. And if you'd like to stay connected or share what's landing for you, come find me over on Instagram. I'd love to meet you there. Until next time, keep trusting your rhythm. Keep honoring your voice and keep becoming the woman you were always meant to be.